Welcome to Season 4 of My Wife the Dietitian, a fun, evidence-based weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy living. On today's show, we go on a special tour of the grocery store in search of low-sodium products after I got some alarming results from a recent health test. Stay with us. Enjoying the show? You can help others find it and enjoy it too by giving us a 5-star rating or review. If you feel like reaching out to us with a question or comment, you can send us an email at mywifetherd@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at mywifethedietitian.com, as well as our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Enjoy the show. You'll have to forgive the warm, crackling fire in the background. It seemed like a good idea at the time. It's what we do on date nights. Warm fire, glass of wine, record podcasts. Life is good. So before you start cursing the new $300 earbuds you just bought to listen to our podcast, they're fine. Instead, just imagine you're sitting with us on date night enjoying the warm, crackling fire. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hey, Rob.
How's it going?
Good. I'm excited to talk to you today about your grocery trip recently.
I had an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I did this
food frequency.
Yeah, food frequency questionnaire. It was like asked all about what I eat and how much and how often, and it was like 20 pages long. It was really, really extensive, and then it gets analyzed and you get all these results, and it tells you like how much you're eating and what you should change and blah, blah, blah. And it turns out I eat a ton, like crazy amounts of food. My calories were like 7,000 or 8,000 a day, which doesn't surprise me because I do eat a lot of food, but it also showed that everything was really high, and that's because I eat a lot of food. But especially concerning was the sodium level. And what's normal? What did you say normal?
So you want less than 2,300 milligrams. That's what the American Heart Association suggests.
Right. And a lot of people are doing like 3,500 or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And mine was like 11,000.
Yeah. And you don't eat, like you eat a lot of fresh vegetables, fruits, whole grains, but
I was a shocker to me. Like I've been different since then. I mean, seriously, it was a bit of an eye opener because I do have heart issues in my family, and I don't know. I've never really paid attention to salt before because I don't know. I've paid attention to fat, protein, like everything else.
And
cholesterol.
You've never had an issue with blood pressure, so that's another thing. I guess, yeah. You know, like if you had high blood pressure or even borderline, or if a doctor or health professional had said to you, you have to watch your blood pressure and maybe reduce your sodium, maybe you would have looked at it before, but you haven't had that experience yet.
But you get your blood pressure checked like not very often, you know. I mean, they call it the silent killer, right? Like high blood pressure. And it's like one of those things that's like, there's no symptoms. It just kind of sneaks up on you. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be that guy. Especially like married to a dietitian, and I have like food related issues that it just isn't. Yeah. That's not something that I was comfortable with. And it was a real shocker to me. And so my recent grocery shopping trip, I'm starting to look at the sodium on the labels, and because right away Sandra's like, oh, like things that are high in sodium are like cheese. I'm like, what? Cheese? That's like my favorite thing to eat. And bread has a ton of sodium. I'm like, what? Really? There's sodium in bread? And like everything that I like is loaded with sodium. So I thought, okay, well, I got to go shopping and figure out how I can still eat and enjoy my food, but also, you know, not knock the sodium out of the park here like I've been doing. So yeah,
especially your lunches. I think the lunch is one of the places in your day where that and snacks are where the sodium really starts to pile up.
It does. And my lunch used to be, I'd make like a bowl, and it would have like spinach or arugula, some greens, some veggies, and then I'd add a bunch of cottage cheese, which is loaded with sodium, apparently, which is unfortunate because I love cottage cheese. I'd add pickles, also sodium. I'd add kimchi, which is also sodium. I'd add nuts on top of it, which often they were salted nuts, which I can change, but it was nice to have a little extra flavor. What else did I put in there? Oh, tofu. I like my smoked tofu. It's delicious, but also loaded with sodium. And it's probably half of my daily allowance, that 2,200 milligrams, is that what we said? 2,300 milligrams. Probably a good half of that was in my lunch bowl. And that's just my lunch. I eat breakfast, I eat snacks, I eat dinner, I eat a lot of food. I eat cheese and crackers. I like my cheese and cracker snacks. I like handfuls of peanuts. And like I said, often they were like roasted and lightly salted. And that was my easy sort of walking through the kitchen go-to snack. And, pasta sauce. That was another thing that's loaded with salt. And I like my pasta. And pasta itself probably loaded with salt. So everything that I was eating is now like on the radar of I gotta change it.
Do you remember we did the episode called A Dash of Salt, episode 36?
Oh, way long time ago.
Yeah. And we talked all about sodium and salt in our food supply. And when you're looking at a label, and actually we did episodes on label reading like really early on, like maybe episode 6 and 7.
Episode 9, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Label reading 8 or 9.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking at sodium on the nutrition facts, when you see the percentage,
and sodium is salt for anyone who doesn't realize that. That's how much salt. And it's not like I always thought when I thought of salt in the food, I thought, like potato chips where you can taste the salt. But there's a lot of foods like bread, for instance, where there's a ton of salt in it, but you don't really taste it. It's not like the bread is salted per se. Do you know what I mean? Like flavored with salt. So there's a lot of foods where the salt is totally hidden in the food. We'll get into this a bit more with my little shopping excursion about some of the foods where I was like blown away at how much salt was in that. But sorry, carry on, Sandra. You're explaining the nutrition facts label.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that, if it's 15% or more is red light. Remember we did the green light, amber, and red?
I should probably listen to that episode.
Yeah, it'd be a good idea.
Now that it matters.
So green light is 5% or less.
Okay.
And that would be fresh fruits and vegetables. Green light, there's no sodium. When they're fresh, if they're canned, they might have some sodium. Mm-hmm. And frozen, typically, if they're just frozen from their fresh state and not flavored, they would be low sodium or under 5%.
Right.
So, that's just a rule of thumb. So over 15% is kind of red light, like stop, look at what else you're eating that day. It's kind of like a sodium budget.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you can just look at, like if you're allowed 2,300 milligrams per day, for instance, I have a wrap. I always get these, and this was usually another thing that I would eat for lunch. And one wrap, like a tortilla, whole wheat tortilla, has 20%, and it's 400 milligrams. So that's 1/5 of my total for the day, or 1/6 maybe. But that's just one like sandwich, and that doesn't include what I put in it, which is by the time I finish putting everything in it, it's probably going to be around 1,000.
Wow.
And that's, like I said, that's just one sandwich out of a whole bunch of things that I eat during the day. So already that's, you can easily do the math. But the 15%, that's a good thing to sort of train your eye to look for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the American Heart Association put out a document called the Salty Six, which is something that I used with education for clients and patients in the past. And so basically, these 6 popular foods can add high levels of sodium to your diet, and they're very popular in North America. And so number 1 is something you already mentioned.
Bread?
Yeah. Breads and rolls. And they might not have that much in one, but over the day, a lot of people are eating sandwiches or toast or, rolls at dinner. And so over the day, it accumulates that sodium in every piece.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
The next one, number 2, is something that everyone loves. It's one of those common foods that is easy, and it's we get it delivered sometimes to
the pizza.
Yeah. So one slice of pepperoni pizza can contain about 1/3 of your daily recommended dietary sodium. So if you have more than one slice, which a lot of people do.
I have like 8 slices.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
So that
there's
would
the
be,
problem. Yeah.
Well, that would be one, definitely a high sodium option. Because what's on that pizza?
Yeah, there's cheese, which is salty. The crust is salty. The pasta sauce, I've discovered through my little shopping journey, is very salty. Some of it, I'll explain in a bit. But yeah, pasta sauce, all the cold meat kind of stuff that you put on a pizza, or cured meat, I guess it's called, right? So the pepperoni and the sausage and all of those kind of ham, I guess. They're all very
like
salty.
Deli meats.
Yeah, they're all very salty meats. Because that was on the list too, right? The deli meat.
Yeah, that's the next one. Actually, the next one is sandwiches. Right. Which is like, you got the bread, you got the cheese, and you got the meat.
Right.
So it's all salty pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the cold cuts and cured meat is number 4. And basically 1 2-ounce serving of any of the deli meats can contain as much as 1/3 of your daily recommended dietary sodium. And then number 5 and 6 are, 6 is similar to this. It's burritos and tacos.
Right. Which is going to be a lot of the filling too. You got that sort of salted meat that's it's flavored and tastes good, and the sauce that's in there probably as well. It's going to be salty.
Yeah, and all of the recommendations for the pizza, the sandwiches, and the burritos and tacos are basically add way more
vegetables, I would guess.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's another concern, like people on the paleo or like the caveman diet or the kind of the carnivore,
the let's eat meat diet.
Yeah, that's one thing. It is probably going to be pretty high in sodium and salt. Mm-hmm. Just looking at those examples. The other one is soup, is the other salty, high sodium food that a lot of people eat. If you're not making it homemade, if you make it homemade, you control what's in it.
Right.
But canned soup or soup from a restaurant is typically pretty high in salt because that gives the flavor. Mm-hmm. And that's why. And yeah, so that definitely episode 36 is one to go back and listen to. And there was another one, Nutrition Nuggets 8. We did potassium sodium ratio. And that's a really good one too.
Right. If you've ever watched any cooking shows, you can see how much salt is included in the process of cooking. It's added all the time. They're always throwing salt in the pan to add flavor and all that. So you can see how the salt gets into the food, and you don't think about it when you're cooking, but yeah, that's
it's a preservative for a lot of foods that are prepared and made elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Then they already have that because it preserves food. The salt is natural flavoring. So there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm just going to walk you through my little grocery tour here. And the goal of my shopping was to I still wanted to eat the same foods. I'm like, I still want cheese. I want to find cheese that doesn't have salt in it because I love cheese. And I want to find bread that's low sodium if I can. And like all the things, I didn't want to change anything. So I thought, let's see if I can find it. And for the most part, I did. So that's the good news, is I didn't really have to change what I eat. I just had to sort of find some different products that were lower in sodium. So I found cheese. What was the cheese? Swiss cheese was really low because the other ones weren't horrible, but the Swiss cheese was half the amount of sodium than the cheddars and the mozzarellas and all that. So that was quite surprising. I think it was 5%. It was a green light, which I liked. And
it's typically a little bit lower in fat too.
Yeah, and it's tasty. I like Swiss cheese. Mm-hmm. So that was a go. And then I was onto the bread. I thought, let's see about the bread. And I looked at the labels on almost every loaf of bread in the store, every brand anyway.
That's good. Wow. I wish more people had, it'd be really good to give yourself like once a month that leisurely walk through the grocery store instead of the just before dinner, you're holding kids on your hip and you're running in and grabbing what you need, right? Because it really makes a difference to look at those labels.
It totally does. I think people were looking at me by the time I got to like the 8th loaf of bread. They're like, what's this guy looking for exactly? Like,
that's right.
But I finally found one. I can't remember what the sodium level was, but it was quite a bit lower than, I think it was 9% maybe, and the other ones were like 13, 14%.
For bread or
for
the
bread.
tortilla? Okay.
Yeah, no, for a loaf of bread. And it was a good, it was like a good whole wheat with lots of seeds and grains and like one of those country harvest kind of, like a good loaf of bread. It wasn't like the crappy white bread. It was, it was a good loaf of bread. So that was a win. And then wraps, that's another thing. I live on wraps and I thought, wow, that's huge. If they're 20%, that's huge. I gotta change that.
Did you find something?
I found, and I've bought these before, but not because of the salt. But these are called. This is a brand in Canada. It's President's Choice, and they're protein tortillas. So there's 6 whole wheat tortillas in the bag, and the sodium level. So the other ones were 20%. These are 12%, which is still getting up there, but almost half of the other ones.
What was the other brand?
What's the other brand here?
Queso
Mendoza, which I've always bought because it was the best value. You get 10 for, I don't know, $4 or something.
And good fiber. There was some good fiber in that too.
Yeah, I mean, they're nutritionally they were okay. They were pretty good. It's just the sodium, was quite high. And so I thought, I should try to find something else so I don't have to like feel worried as I'm eating my tortilla sandwich, whatever I made for lunch. I don't have to like be scared of eating.
I hope not.
No, because I love eating, and it's like I'm going to figure this out because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to be scared of eating.
Well, that's good. Most people get to that realization after they've had like a heart attack or an event that forces them to evaluate what they're eating.
Well, I had an event. It was that food questionnaire, and it's like, holy crap, that's a lot of salt. I got to figure this out. So the other things I found, which a couple of surprises. I found salsa, which I love. I love salsa. One of the jars of salsa was loaded with salt, and I guess it's partly a preservative and partly added for flavor. And so I looked at a few other jars of salsa, and I found another one that was half as much sodium. So, like it pays to keep looking. You'll find something, maybe, sometimes. Pasta sauce was another one. So I'd been using this pasta sauce that I really liked for quite a long time. It was in a can, and it was a really flavorful. It was cheap. It was like a cheap no-name brand, but it was really tasty. And I thought, well, this is great value. I like it.
Oh, this zesty?
Yeah, it was just a zesty, like no-name, whatever. And I've been using it for a long time because I really like the flavor. And like I said, it was cheap. So that was the go-to. And I looked at that, and it was way up there with sodium, like 29%, like way up there. And I was like, oh man, that's my favorite sauce. And like I said, I looked at a few other ones, finally found one that was like 12%, I think, but it was in a jar. I don't know if that makes a difference because you were saying with things that are canned, sometimes like canned vegetables, is it the process that they add more salt because of the preservatives? Maybe. I don't know if putting it in a jar is different, or if it's just the fact that it was a different product, but. Well,
and you know that you can look for low sodium options with cans and jars. So just for listeners.
Yeah, true. I don't think they would have that for like salsa or.
I think eventually there'll be a consumer demand, and the products will, I think the development of low sodium will be in our future.
Mm-hmm. I think there's one other thing. It was the canned fish, because I thought, that's going to be super salty. Because it tastes salty, right? Some of the canned fish that you eat, it tastes salty, but it wasn't too bad. The one thing I did notice was because we eat a lot of oysters and mussels. We like those. And the mussels had less, same brand, same amount, same everything. The mussels had less sodium than the oysters, which I guess it just comes down to the fish itself. Maybe is one absorbs more salt or something. I don't know. But anyway, the whole purpose of this discussion, I guess, is just to show you that it's worth looking and checking the labels of different things and different products of the same, like I said, pasta sauce or bread, and see if there is something that sort of suits your requirements as far as the sodium, or if you're looking for something that has lower cholesterol maybe, or lower whatever. I'm sure it's no different if, depending on what your needs are, your nutritional needs.
Yeah. And when you are looking, just keep in mind that prepackaged rice and seasoning mixtures are taking up more of the grocery aisles, like more convenience items. Mm-hmm. And with convenience comes a cost, right? So they're fast, they're easy, they're tasty, but they're also high in salt and also, often, higher in fat maybe. And the salt and sodium content of those are a lot different than, for instance, if you just bought brown rice or wild rice to cook.
Yeah. That is actually, I meant to mention that. The one thing, by the time I was finished, like on my last few aisles, I kind of knew what things would have a high sodium level. And I looked, and we eat pierogies sometimes in the house here. And as I went to reach for them, and I'm like, oh yeah, these are going to be super high because A, they're processed. B, they have like a filling in them that's flavored. So flavor means salt. And sure enough, they weren't crazy, but they were definitely up there. Meatballs, anything like Sandra said, like anything that's flavored. So your flavored rices, any of those kind of pre-packaged, flavored, ready to eat. Check the sodium.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the pasta, the fresh pasta, sometimes we get, just the regular, it's like cheap
tortellini, whatever.
Yeah, cheap pasta, just the dried pasta. It's zero. There's like 0% sodium. But then the fresh pasta, sometimes they're stuffed with cheese or meat, and then that would drive up their sodium levels.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to know. Like I said, I never looked at that stuff before, so it's good to understand what you're looking at and realize there are some other options out there.
And for snacks and for lunch, you sometimes use different tofu, like either the smoked, the flavored one, or the sriracha one. And you said that, oh my gosh, I didn't realize there's sodium in tofu.
Well, I kind of figured that when I picked it up, and I'm like, well, it's flavored, it's processed, it's probably going to be high in sodium, and I like it, so therefore it's going to be high in sodium. And I think it would. You got one there. What's the sodium on that?
Yeah, they are 14%.
Yeah,
so they're at
they're
red
up there.
light.
They're higher than cheese. And ironically, I started eating those so I wouldn't eat as much cheese.
Different fat profile, right?
I was focused on fat because of heart health, which is funny because I should I guess I should be looking at both.
Well, I know it gets complicated though. And
does it ever?
Absolutely. Because what's the priority here? Maybe if you had high LDL cholesterol, that would be another factor to consider. If your blood pressure was high, then definitely the sodium and the salt. So listeners out there, just, you have to figure out like, what's my priority with,
based on eating. what my sort of
health status,
blood work, whatever says. Yeah. So there you go. So do you know sort of off the top of your head, just a few other maybe surprise foods that maybe look for that you wouldn't expect to find salt? Yeah.
Some of the cereals.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of had a peek at those too. And especially the super flavored ones. I mean, sugar, obviously, but salt definitely is up there as well. And I mean, when parents are looking at kids' cereals, they're probably only looking at the sugar content, but I suppose salt is important for kids' health too.
Yeah, and also any kind of like seasoning, like soy sauce or sauces,
salad
dressings or dips.
Yeah,
those are usually, that's where some flavor comes from. For when you're dipping your vegetables or whatever, there's gonna be some sodium in those.
Mm-hmm. I did actually find some that were on the lower end, but like you said, you gotta sort of search through them, and salad dressing especially, they do have sort of the health conscious versions of them. So,
and one of those easiest things to make at home, seriously, like oil and vinegar. How hard is that?
Oh, and it's tasty.
And maybe a little bit of mustard, to get a little bit of flavor in there. Mm-hmm. And, making the hummus with a can of chickpeas and garlic and either peanut butter or tahini sauce, like it's actually pretty easy too, and olive oil. So you control the ingredients when you make things at home, and you can really reduce the sodium intake that way.
Yeah. What's the tzatziki like? Because we eat that quite a bit. I find that's a nice replacement for salad dressing, and it's probably a bit healthier because it's like a yogurt based. And that's another thing that's probably not too difficult to make at home. So check that one out too. With
cucumber and lemon juice and garlic and yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no sodium except for maybe the yogurt.
Yeah. So there you go. Little tidbit of information, something to keep in mind next time you're out shopping. Just check the label, just out of curiosity. Just sort of see what we're talking about here, and maybe just keep that in mind as you're doing your own shopping. If sodium should be a concern for everyone, or at least on your radar, so that it doesn't become a concern.
And the foods with no labels are usually either zero sodium or very low.
Yeah, and by no label, you mean like a banana.
Like I pulled a carrot out of the garden. I took some kale out of the garden, or I bought them in the produce section. So, fresh fruits and vegetables tend to be, and that's where we know with North Americans, we know that people are not getting enough vegetables and fruits in their diet. Like that's just the evidence.
Mm-hmm. So that needs to change. So to fill your plate up with that stuff. Well, there you go. That is it for today. If you want more information on what we're doing, check out our website. It's mywifethedietitian.com. There's lots of great information there. We've got a great blog, tons of awesome articles full of good, healthy information. We also have a weekly newsletter you can subscribe to. Lots of great tips in that as well. Some recipe ideas.
Rob's recipes every week and a tip of the week.
Yeah. It's definitely worth subscribing. That's free to do. Just send us, you don't even have to send us an email. Just sign up on the website. But you can also send us an email if you have questions that you want us to discuss on the show. We love answering listener questions, so feel free to fire your questions at us.
Yeah, we have a lineup of questions for shows in the future, and I'm excited about putting those shows together to help the listeners who sent us some questions.
Absolutely. So the email is mywifetherd@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to us there as well. Don't forget to rate and review. That is super helpful. It helps other people find the show. It keeps things moving forward here. And it's just nice to hear some feedback about what we're doing and if we're on the right track in helping you with your health and nutrition needs. And don't forget to share with your friends too. That's something else that is super helpful. So that is it for this week. Well, it isn't for the whole week. We'll be back Wednesday with Nutrition Nuggets, which is another fun little tidbit of information for you. That's on Wednesday. So until then, have a great week, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.